we're going to be recapping how the regular season, sort of went for both teams. We're going to be starting off with the Raiders. And, Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about how the Raiders versus Broncos game went?
Well, we were correct in our assumption that the Raiders would win this game. And they did so in pretty dominant fashion. They won the game 27-14. I'm not going to get too crazy into like stats. I've sent you a couple tweets you could probably pull up just to kind of give a little bit of context as far as the game. And also one thing about the field condition pregame. But I'll just list off the guys that popped to me, or if you want yourself, who is the viewer watching this video, if you want to go on ESPN app or whatever and look at the stats for this game, I would suggest looking at these player stats, okay? Davante Adams, Jacoby Myers, Zamir White, Trey Tucker, Aiden O'Connell, Divine Diablo, Marcus Epps, Isaiah Polamau showed up in this game, especially early on. Malcolm Kuntz again, Max Crosby, Adam Butler again. Tyree Wilson had a good game. He got a sack, as did, I think, Butler, Crosby, and Kuntz. And then Trevon Merrick had the game-sealing interception in this game. They all had fantastic games, every single one of those players. And Jack Jones. Great game from him.
Who? Jack Jones.
So, obviously, this is a tweet from Jermaine Illuminor. Can you actually pull up the tweet that he's quoting?
Yes.
Because this guy, Scotty Grange, and I must apologize in advance. If I sound congested or anything, I'm in like the process of getting over COVID right now. Mm-hmm. But this is how the end zone looked on the field. And this guy's Scotty Grange, I'm assuming he's a Denver insider. Maybe you could pull up his profile really quick. There you go. Okay, so bring it back. So if you don't know, now you do. But you see his tweet, and it's like, the playing surface looks awful today in Vegas. Sad. 2 thumbs down. That's a very Broncos homer sort of tweet. I get it. That doesn't look good. That definitely doesn't look good. I don't know why it would look so patchy in the end zone. I mean, I don't really have any like good excuse or anything, but my best guess is, hey, the Super Bowl is going to be held there in a couple weeks. Maybe they're getting ready for that.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So maybe they're planning to replant the grass. I don't know, because it's natural grass. It's also possible that they let it out in the sun for too long. I don't know, but I know they have a process to that. So it doesn't seem like something that would be a mistake. I have a hard time believing that, because I've never heard of that so far in the stadium. They haven't had issues like this. So I don't know. And then you can pull back to Jermaine Illuminor's tweet just to give a little bit more context here.
Wait, real quick. I'm not going to pull up that picture, but did you see like somebody put a side-by-side comparison of this and Kevin Durant's hair, like from the back?
God,
it was hilarious.
No. That's there you go. But obviously Illuminor's saying here, been meaning to get to this. This was a picture of the field when I went to warm up pregame. He took a photo of the end zone to get some interactions. Congrats. Our grass is one of the best surfaces I've played on, and I bet any other player would say the same. So, I'm not saying it's a reach, because I understand, like, from his videos, it looks bad. Mm-hmm. But it also, I mean, you read his tweet and you're like, really, dude? He sounds like he's Donald Trump. The playing surface looks awful today in Vegas. Sad.
Or like a really like a critic or like a high school bully.
Yeah, just like, who cares, dude? Unless a player gets hurt because of the field conditions, which that's MetLife. That's not Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
But I appreciated Jermaine Illuminor kind of standing up for the field. And there's another tweet I sent you from Jermaine where he stands
Mhm.
up head coach, the current interim head coach. If you could pull that one up.
From Illuminor?
Yes, sir.
Got it.
So, also, AP is one of the best coaches I've ever had. Fuck experience. You gain that on the go. But leadership isn't something you build, it's something you're born with. Don't know how my season would have went without him, and I'll forever be grateful for him. And that's an offensive lineman. That's not
Mhm.
even a defensive lineman or something like that. Like, that's a guy on the offense saying, AP had a big effect on my season. So, I like what I hear from Illuminor, and this is a guy who's an upcoming free agent, which again I'd like to get into maybe in our next episode, but we'll see. I know that our next couple episodes are going to be very playoff heavy. Maybe after the playoffs we can get into free agents. We'll see. We'll figure it out. But to see a guy who's an upcoming free agent have clearly a very uh, how would you say, like, he's very pro Raiders. This isn't a
Mhm.
guy that sounds like he's ready to leave. He sounds like a guy who wants to stay. So I like that. Um, if there are any other things that I sent you, I guess you could just kind of send them up one by one, and then we'll move
Mhm.
on to our next topic after. In this Broncos game, the Raiders defense combined for 5 sacks, 8 tackles for loss, 11 QB hits, 5 pass breakups, and an interception against the Broncos. Uh, It was just another dominant performance from the defense, really, but the offense looked good too. This was a game where when everything goes right, this is how good the team can be. At least with Aiden O'Connell, you know, 27-14. That's pretty damn good against a division rival, which to end the season, the Raiders went 4-2 against the division, against the AFC West. The 2 losses being against the Chargers in week 4 and the Chiefs, our first, game against them. But Antonio Pierce went 4-1 against the division, one of those being that Chiefs game. And in getting this win, Antonio Pierce ends the season with a winning record at 5-4 overall. So that was a big thing for me, with my view towards him was if he ends the season a winner, keep him. Go right ahead. Um, but as far as you can pull up another tweet, as far as, well, I don't want to get into what the Raiders will do this offseason yet, but I expect Mark Davis to do his due diligence,
Mhm.
no matter what, and that seems to be the direction he's going in based off of what I've heard today. So,
Mhm. Real quick, I want to address this tweet that you sent me. It's Isaiah Polamau consistently makes plays, yet consistently doesn't get playing time. It kind of reminds me of Hufunga's rookie year, where he was making a lot of good plays and looked solid, but maybe was like spotty. And then the next year, he made a lot of plays and was an All Pro in the NFL. So I know Polamalu is related to Troy Polamalu and probably works with him, in the offseason or has worked with him before, due to the relation. Um, so, I don't know if there's something to be made about I guess not the correlation with like inconsistent playing time in the rookie year, but uh I don't think that it should define him, going forward. Obviously, the season's over, so he doesn't have an opportunity to get more playing time. But maybe next year he could have a big jump.
yeah, and Isaiah Polamau, he's a restricted free agent, which means it's very likely that he'll be back, because they can just tender him, I think is the term, and it'll be a pretty cheap deal.
Hmm.
Uh, but he's the quintessential backup safety in my opinion. And in this game against the Broncos, he was playing a lot of like sub packages where he was like, down in the box. He got a sack in this game. I mean, he was just all over the field. early on. And as you may have seen in the comments on that last one, not to say that you should put it back, but he was playing while Merrick and Epps were also on the field. So I don't know if it was just like it's the last game, let's get him some snaps or what, or if it was just a part of the game plan, but he went out there and he showed that he deserves to stay here. And I'm glad that they did that regardless of what the intention was, because whether they get a new GM or whatever, it'd be nice for them to keep him. So,
Mm-hmm.
And then as far as zero penalties, another game under Pierce with zero penalties. It's the second time with him, which is the first time in franchise history where the Raiders had 2 games with zero penalties in a single season. And this is also, I want to say, the first time in Raiders history that they had the least amount of penalties in a single season amongst all NFL teams. So I would say that's pretty impressive. And again, I've commented on that before, but I like what I hear when I see that.
I want to bring back the 2016 Raiders where they had the most penalties in NFL history and still won a game.
Yeah, went to the playoffs, But
I mean, they can miss the playoffs. Like, it doesn't really, harm me one way or another. But it was just kind of fun to watch where like they would just find ways to win, like different ways. It's like,
it was
I don't know.
Derek
It was
Carr's
exciting.
comebacks. It was a lot of Derek Carr comebacks, and then Khalil Mack getting game-ending fumble recoveries, or forced fumbles. But yeah, that 2016 was magical, and this season had some magic to it too. But it was a little too late,
Well, let's talk about it. Let's recap the 2023 season.
Yeah. I mean, let's see. Are there any tweets that I seen that might involve that? I don't know. But
a couple of them are like head coaching oriented, and I kind of want to save it for the next topic.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll start with the Raiders ended with 8 wins. They ended up 8-9, if I'm not mistaken. I want to confirm that actually.
Was that far off from my prediction?
That's what I was going to get into is all of our predictions. So the Raiders did end out 8-9, second in the division. I remember preseason a lot of, experts saying, "Oh, the Raiders are going to win 4 to 5 games." 4 to 5 games. Okay. Yeah, that really annoyed me, and I knew that wasn't going to happen. We both did. So as far as the record, as far as what we predicted, you predicted 8 to 11 wins. But you were very like bold on 8. But then you said 8 to 11. And then I said my prediction was 9-8. So I was 1 game off. I wanted a winning record. We didn't get that. But we were both very close.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you say was the MVP of the Raiders this season as a player?
Max Crosby.
Yeah, I would say it was also Crosby. Yeah, I would have to vote Crosby. In the beginning, a week before the season started, we had our season predictions episode, and that's where I'm getting this info from. You chose Josh Jacobs as your MVP for the Raiders. I chose Max Crosby. How about breakout? Who do you think was the Raiders' breakout for this season player?
I'd have to say it's Jack Jones right now.
Jack Jones is, I would say Jack Jones is probably for the second half of the season or since he got picked up for sure. Because I would go as far to say he might. I wouldn't call him a shutdown corner, but he is he might be a top 10 to 15 corner right now. Like statistically, he's killing it. But I would say that Malcolm Kuntz is the guy for me that was the breakout player this season. Actually, Malcolm Kuntz or Robert Spillane.
I like Kuntz. I think
Yeah,
I think definitely he's been a breakout player this season for the Raiders, no question.
yeah, especially again in the second half of the season. You chose uh, Hunter Renfro or Jacoby Myers or uh, why am I forgetting his first name? Tyree Wilson. I almost said Tyler. I was like, as your breakout candidates. And then I chose, as honorable mention, Marcus Epps, which actually isn't the worst choice. My
Mhm.
third choice for breakout was Malcolm Kuntz because at that time we had the issue with Chandler Jones. My second choice was Divine Diablo, and then my first choice was a tie between Tyree Wilson and Jacorian Bennett, which I don't know what happened to Jacorian Bennett, man. He started the season like, oh, he's going to become that corner. He's going to do it. And then benched, you know? So I don't know what happened with the coaching staff and whatnot, or if it was just a matter of, oh, we need to get the veterans out there because we need to go out there and win games, you know? I don't know. But hopefully he gets his fair shots the next couple seasons. Um, and then as far as stats, I mean, Aiden O'Connell ended the season with 2,218 yards passing, 12 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Obviously, that's like a little more than half the season. Um, Josh Jacobs ended with 805 rushing yards, um, 6 touchdowns. Devontae
How many
Adams,
games did Jacobs end up playing?
13.
So, 800 yards to, for 13 games. I mean, he had a 1,000-yard trajectory.
Yeah, he did. He did. He just, the thing with Jacobs and, geez Louise, wow, really? Oh, receiving, let's see. Michael Mayer
Mhm.
is that they had season-ending injuries where we kept holding on to hope, like, oh, they're going to come back, they're going to come back, and then they just never came back. Like they both missed like the last 4 weeks of the season. So Zamir White came in though and was pretty good for Jacobs. I mean, in basically 4 games, Zamir White had 451 yards and 1 touchdown, but over half as many yards as Jacobs in just 4, maybe 5 games. It's pretty
Mhm.
good. Um, and that should be a big topic as we get towards free agency is the whole Josh Jacobs or Zamir White thing because that's a big decision. You know, after the head coach, that decision will come, and then eventually the quarterback decision. You know, but Devontae Adams, 1,144 yards. Let's see, 8 touchdowns. I don't know why I thought he had 10 and 103 receptions. Jacoby Myers, 73 receptions, 807 yards, 8 touchdowns. And then on defense, Max Crosby ends the season with 14.5 sacks. Let's see. Where's the total? 90 tackles, which is third on the team. Robert Spillane had 148 tackles, as well as 3 interceptions. Divine Diablo was second with 106 tackles. Um, who else? Actually, I want to see Adam Butler's stats here.
What were
Where?
Nate Hobbs' stats? Because I know you were kind of high on Nate Hobbs going into the season. How did he, finish out his 2023 season?
Let's see, Nate Hobbs. Nate Hobbs. Sorry, I'm trying to find him. It's ranking it by total tackles.
Mhm.
Oh, he's actually fourth on the team with tackles, 86. He had 1 sack, 6 tackles for loss, which Max Crosby had 23, and I'm curious if that led the league. 7 passes defended by Nate Hobbs, 1 interception, and a forced fumble. So I mean, pretty good year for Hobbs as a slot corner. He's like to me, Hobbs is this guy who's kind of like he'll have his great plays in coverage. He'll also have the plays where it's like, oh, I just wish he was stickier. You know,
Mhm.
I just wish he was a little closer. Uh, but as far as like defending the run and stuff, like he's a dog, you know. Let's see, where's Adam Butler? Adam Butler, 28 tackles, 5 sacks for a D tackle. That's pretty good. Uh, 8 tackles for loss, four four passes defended. Wow, and a forced fumble.
I think the best metric to use to like kind of, I guess, judge cornerbacks is to see like the the passer rating that quarterbacks have against them. I feel like that's probably, you know, like how often they're targeted to, also plays into a part. How many,
Yeah,
I don't know. I feel like corner is such a tough like position to judge just by watching it on TV and not being able to like see it on film because one thing I don't like about the NFL is that they're pretty dead set on giving us the side view instead of like having alternate ways to watch the game like, from like a Madden perspective where you're looking from the back of the offense and you're looking towards the end zone so that way you can see all the players, the plays that they run and everything. Instead, it's just like, all right, we're gonna look at like half the defense and then like the entire, most of the offense because sometimes the receivers even go off the screen. It depends what stadium you're in. Uh, and then let's just kind of focus on the quarterback and nothing else. Like they should absolutely have alternate cameras at all times, and then you can flip to other
yeah.
channels.
No, that'd be sweet.
I think the NBA does that, and I think the MLB probably does that too.
Hmm.
Like I
That's
get
probably all I have.
or I get upholding like the tradition too of watching football from that angle, but like there needs to be other options.
Right.
I might not be the only one saying it too, but I'm definitely uh I don't hear it enough. I don't hear enough people talking about that. But
Right.
in terms of the Raiders, just to kind of like summarize what it seemed like from the outside, it was a season for the Raiders that seemed like, you know, it was just going to be another wasted season right after they fired McDaniels, you know. When was that? Like week 5, week 6? How long did McDaniels last?
I think it was week 8, the
Might
Lions
I mean,
game.
yeah, but I know Raider fans were begging for him to be fired way before that. So,
Hmm.
in a way, Raider fans got what they wanted then. Obviously, every Raider fan wanted to go to the playoffs this season, and really, this would have been the year to do it too. I don't think Kansas City is really that strong, compared to how they've been in the past, and even the Raiders, kind of, um, spoiled the Christmas for Kansas City this year. You did say in the predictions that the Raiders would split with Kansas City. They would at least beat them once. So you were right on that. You were right that they would split with the Chargers. You were you were dead on that they were going to beat the Broncos. I don't even think that you said that they were going to split with the Broncos. What happened is that they had a coaching change mid-year, and then so you know everybody gravitated towards Antonio Pierce, and he was this new energy, and he was everything that Josh McDaniels wasn't. And McDaniels was just like, sorry ass system coach that like, you know, really he didn't even look like, you know, he wasn't getting creative on the play calls or anything, and really like the play calling didn't get better when Antonio Pierce stepped in, but it was really the leadership that I think Jermaine Illuminor, kind of touched on that he's, you can't teach leadership. And it's going to be interesting to see what the Raiders do, going forward. Do we want to talk about the next or jump into the next topic, kind of, talking about, um, where do the Raiders go from here?
Yeah. I mean, the last thing I'll say on the recap. Actually, this is more towards the Broncos game, but the Raiders are on a 8-game win streak against the Broncos. Just had to.
They haven't they haven't lost to the Broncos since they were in Oakland,
Yeah.
right?
They as long as the Raiders have been in Las Vegas, they are undefeated against the Broncos. The Denver Broncos have not beaten the Las Vegas Raiders ever.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, it dates back to 01 for sure. So.
Oh, and before we get to where do the Raiders go from here, I just want to say it was another season too, which is so disheartening for fans like you. I can see it from a mile away. It's like, all right, you even said you hope this doesn't happen, but get so close to where you just missed the playoffs, and then you get so far away to where you can't draft, in the top 10 or top 5, right? Like the Raiders were so close. Would they have made the playoffs if they had just beat the Colts?
The
Based on like the
Raiders,
scenarios based on the scenarios you gave.
the Steelers would have ruined it because
Okay.
they needed to win at least or lose at least one game, and they won out. They beat both the Seahawks and the Ravens.
Mm-hmm.
So regardless, like the Raiders, at the end of the day, the Raiders gave a great effort, and I can't be all that mad about the Colts game. You could call back a couple of penalties, and suddenly the Raiders might take that game to overtime. But at the end of the day, it's just I can't fault Antonio Pierce for not making the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
All I was asking for was a winning season as far as his 9 games, and he gave that to me. Like to
Mm-hmm.
that, I say I'm happy with you being my head coach. Absolutely happy. I understand Mark Davis wanting to go and go with the full interview process. I can't be mad at it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think Antonio Pierce can either. We'll get to that. It's just
Well, let's talk about it now.
all right. Yeah.
Talk about
Well,
it now. Where do the Raiders go from here? Because you mentioned that Antonio Pierce finished with that winning record in his 9 games. What was his record, Mike?
Antonio Pierce, he was 5-4.
He was 5-4. Okay. All right. So he was just above 500, and a lot of those games I feel like weren't against maybe the toughest opponents that the Raiders could have been playing. So you kind of take that with a grain of salt. You have to think about, when you're hiring a head coach, I'm not saying Antonio Pierce didn't earn the opportunity to be the head coach of the Raiders going forward. If I'm Mark Davis, I heavily consider giving him a prove it deal, where maybe it's like 1 to 2 years and Antonio Pierce will have a full off season to prepare this team and, have 1 to 2 years to get his offense rolling, because right now he and Patrick Graham have the defense prepared. The defense is playing great. And I know that you are worried that bringing in another head coach like a Jim Harbaugh might potentially seal the fate of Patrick Graham going somewhere else. But right now, since Mark Davis is going through and interviewing people, Antonio Pierce and the Raider staff have sort of given permission to assistant coaches to go look for opportunities elsewhere.
Yeah.
If Patrick Graham gets hired somewhere else before a decision has been made about Antonio Pierce, Jim Harbaugh, or whoever, how are you feeling about retaining Antonio Pierce at that point?
Yeah, that would be that's a good question, that's for sure. I don't know. I guess there's this scary thought process for me of, okay, the Raiders, like you said, Mark Davis or whoever said, hey, when Monday comes around, Black Monday or whatever they call it, when that comes around, you guys have permission to go and look for jobs elsewhere if they come to you. And I would have to imagine the 2 names that will get the most interest will be Patrick Graham and Champ Kelly, the interim general manager. I haven't heard anything about either yet, at least I don't think. And it's only Monday, but yeah, if Patrick Graham goes and becomes the defensive coordinator at some other team, I'm just going to be like, dude, are you kidding me? And I mean, okay, he had his press conference like 2 weeks ago now, basically saying a lot of people were thinking that he was kind of saying goodbye or like maybe prepping for it, where he was like, I don't want to get emotional here, but this was my favorite, essentially his favorite season as a coach. Like period. Like he had the most fun with his team and blah 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 blah. Like what it sounded like to me was he wants to stay, but also he's aware of the situation and he knows like anything can happen. You know, I don't know. I would like to think that I'll just answer your question. It would upset me. Um, I'm having a hard time with this, but I have mentioned that like essentially my loyalties line with Patrick Graham, not necessarily Antonio Pierce. Can I would I be fine with keeping Antonio Pierce without Patrick Graham? Yeah, sure, but I think okay, if Patrick Graham leaves before we even find the right coach or just the interview process is over, if Patrick Graham leaves, I'm leaning Harbaugh because that would force me into well, now no matter what, we're probably going to have some changes coming, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, if Patrick Graham left before a coach is even hired, that would make me favor Harbaugh. But until that happens, am I favoring Antonio Pierce? Maybe. Like I'm really 50-50 right now. Like I see the positives to both. Like with Antonio Pierce, it's like, oh, let's run it back. Let's give him a good offseason to go and do it his way, you know. Um, but if it's not him, if it's Harbaugh, then I'd like to hope that we keep Patrick Graham. But even if not, maybe he brings in a defensive coordinator that can keep the same system. I don't know. So
Mhm. I feel like the Raiders are kind of like they're not skating on thin ice, but definitely in like, slippery slope territory because I feel like they're in a position to where, the players have had a lot of say in the past couple weeks and they really look up to Antonio Pierce. Antonio Pierce has been, you know, the guy in Las Vegas over the past 9 weeks.
yeah,
Um, a lot of players and, I don't see this very often for teams. A lot of players have been outright vouching for Antonio Pearson. Not just that, they're questioning the decision of even considering getting someone else. Right now, you know, people have sort of talked about Mark Davis cannot make the same mistake again, right? But at a certain point, does it become, is Mark Davis going to learn from his mistakes, or is this just going to be the tendency with him? Because I feel like this will be the third time in recent memory that I can remember that Mark Davis has moved on from somebody who's doing good and gotten the guy that he just wants,
mm.
you know. So let me tell you the other two, and then this would be the third. So Jack Del Rio, I thought was doing a good job as the Raiders head coach. I thought he was doing a fine job, and I think they missed the playoffs in his final season. And then Mark Davis decided, you know, he just wanted John Gruden. Like
Mm.
he didn't think about giving Jack Del Rio another year, and he didn't even want to interview anyone else. I think the Raiders like have to do something in order to like circumvent the Rooney Rule.
Yeah, he was dead set on Gruden, so I think they just interviewed their tight ends coach and their, backup wide receiver coach, whatever you want to call it, assistant.
Mhm. And then after that, they went, you know, Gruden had his whole, NFL scandal, Gruden got canceled and then they had to part ways, right? I don't think there's bad blood between the Raiders and Gruden, or at least, the Raiders don't feel that way towards Gruden. Maybe Gruden feels that way the other way around, but I don't think so. Um, and then Rich Bisaccia or Bizacchia, however it's supposed to be pronounced. I apologize. Um, he you know he leads the Raiders to the playoffs in, you know probably the worst conditions that you could imagine, like what didn't happen to the Raiders that season? Like Henry Ruggs got into that, really unfortunate car accident that, cost people lives. And then that was like their first round pick who was actually looking, like a promising receiver that season. And then the John Gruden thing happened. And then, all of a sudden this team makes the playoffs and is within one possession of beating, the Bengals, who eventually went to the Super Bowl on the road.
Yep.
I think I remember you telling me, you're like, that's all I wanted. You just wanted to see a playoff game, have it go down to the wire. Even if the Raiders didn't pull it out, you just wanted to see, your team in the playoffs. You did.
Yeah.
And then Mark Davis decided that he was just going to go with Josh McDaniels because that's who he wanted. That was probably at the time maybe the top coaching candidate.
Well, I think the way that McDaniels went, from what I understand, it wasn't that he was the guy that Mark Davis wanted. I think at the time, and this is actually a good topic to have after we're done talking about this, but I think at the time Mark Davis was kind of addicted to the thought of, I need to redo the Patriot way, just like at least 5 other teams have tried with different Patriots coaches, becoming their head coaches. But the difference is we saw Josh McDaniels in Denver, but he was young. He went back to New England and continued his success with them. So it was like, we haven't seen Josh McDaniels really get his chance to do this. And then when basically Mark Davis found out, like, oh, Josh McDaniels is available, like, you could hire him. He was like, whoa, I could go get the guy who's been calling plays for one of the most prolific offenses the past 20 years, won 6 Super Bowls or however many it's been. Hell yeah. Like, yeah, in theory and whatnot, it makes sense. It just felt, I think, to him like, oh, that's too good to pass up, and it's very well possible that Harbaugh could be that next guy. I just hope he thinks, because to your point, yes, it's like, man, you kind of had it with Bazakia, although I feel like I was a little less confident with Bazakia and Greg. I'm forgetting the offensive coordinator's name. Damn it, the guy who, like, with Derek Carr and everything. Oh man, his name was Greg. Whatever. I think he's with the Rams now or something, or the Seahawks, actually, I think. But he was the quarterback coach and offensive coordinator. And then, shit, I don't even remember who our defensive coordinator was at the time. Before Patrick Graham. But I didn't have the same trust that they could run a system through an off season. The only person I actually trusted a little bit was Mike Mayock, because I felt like he's smart, but the problem with him was he had 0 previous experience. He was like, he's a good scout, I guess, but he's not like a proven general manager. He was very good at, like, speaking to the media, but that doesn't mean that he was a good GM, Whereas now it's like, okay, we have Champ Kelly, who has been molded to be a good GM. We have Pierce, who has done nothing but prove that he's a solid coaching candidate. A great defensive coordinator with a great defense. I would say on paper, I think they're a top 10 defense, at least the second half of the season, statistically. At least top 10 scoring defense, Their run defense needs help, but their pass defense is top 10. And then they just need to figure out the offensive coordinator, It's like, I can trust that more than I could even trust Bazakia and that group, right? Because it seemed like Bazakia was going to be very loyal to, like, Carr and stuff, whereas this, it's like, oh, let's go find our quarterback of the future. Like, it feels better, but I don't know. I think Harbaugh could be that guy that's just like, oh, Mark Davis sitting there like, I can't pass that up. And then there's the theory or thought process that, whoa, what if Tom Brady's in his ear, Like, what if Tom Brady is now one of the guys that are, helping him in the hiring process,
I have to say this might be, aside from relocating the team to Las Vegas, because I'm sure that was a tough decision for Mark Davis to do. This might be the toughest decision that Mark Davis has had to make for the Raiders ever. Because right now he is pinned between, in one hand, he's got a head coach that not just the players want, and the players really want Antonio Pierce to be back. He's got all the fans want him. I'm going to share that tweet that you sent me with the fans chanting Antonio Pierce,
Yeah.
running off.
And they're better.
I heard that Antonio Pierce got out of his car on the way to the stadium and was like hugging fans. I don't know if that was true, but the fans really like Antonio Pierce. So on this one hand, you've got somebody that like everyone loves. And then on the other hand, you've got what may be the best head coaching candidate in the past God knows how long. The last time Harbaugh coached in the NFL, he took a team that was poorly coached by Mike Singletary and turned them in one season into an NFC championship, level team that should have went to the Super Bowl if it was not for Kyle Williams like fumbling 3 times and muffing a punt.
Right.
And then they lost to the Ravens, who had Hall of Famers on that defense too. And then they lost to Seattle. Like, say what you want, but the Raiders, I know, would kill to be in that position. Like, nobody wants to be in second place.
Yeah,
nobody wants to be dog shit for 20 years like the Raiders have been. No offense.
Right, and like, all I want is I want playoff wins first, because like the past, say, 10 years, all I've been trying to see this team build itself up towards, depending on what level it's at. So if it's a rebuild, it's like, okay, let's get a couple wins, maybe try to get like a top pick. Then they do that. Okay, let's try to get around 500. Let's win some fucking games. Okay, they do that. Okay, cool. Now let's go win games, getting a winning season, and make the playoffs. They fail, they fire their coach, they restart, right? Or they finally make the playoffs, and either their quarterback breaks his leg, or it's on an interim coach, and then they start over, start the process. It's like this offseason is the perfect point where it's like they're winning games. They have a fucking defense for the first time in my life. All they need is the quarterback and the right coach. Antonio Pierce very well could be that guy. But if you can get Harbaugh, I totally understand. I totally do. Here's my problem, and I sent you a tweet. It's a video of Nate Hobbs, if you could play it. And you could probably guess what my fear is, but I think players would buy into Harbaugh, absolutely, But go ahead and play the video.
Okay.
You feel like you guys have built something here, especially on defense, and some momentum at the end of the season to carry into next year?
No, I think this team we got right here is special. It's filled with special people. Energy is contagious. And first of all, they got heart. They got fight in their heart. You know what I'm saying? We never give up. You can't watch a game this year and say we were supposed to lose that game, but we gave up. And every game, after Pizza Go, every game is big. They played a hell of a game.
Right. What do you think the key is to make sure that this kind of game is going to be more consistent?
You're one of them. You say what?
What do you feel you guys have to go do next year to make sure these types of games are the more consistent games in terms of the outcome?
I think really all we got to do is bring that feedback. That's all. Simple as that. Simple as that. Simple as that. Simple. Plain and simple.
You feel good about going into next year? I know this is going to be a year where off-season where you think about
if
things.
If you don't come back, then we boycott it. Sit out like the 2012 NBA lockout.
I mean, obviously he means a lot to you guys. Were you playing for him today?
Yeah, for sure. We all was. He means something to us.
Why is that?
he allow us to be us. That's special, you know. You don't get that at this level. You're
Right.
allowed to be yourself and play how you want to play. Bring yourself to work every day and make you love your job, man. For real.
Real quick, I do want to give a shout out to, I guess Vincent
Bonsignor.
Monsignor, who provided this video. This is a really good interview. So
I feel like you guys have built
if you want to follow him on Twitter, this is pretty good. Yeah, man, this is going to be the toughest decision that Mark Davis is going to make, and
What-
yeah,
Here's my thing.
I know the boycotting thing isn't going to happen, but like, there's going to be like a mental, like, like, do you remember when I told you like the stepdad sort of complex
I don't know.
last episode where I'm like, I know Antonio Pierce isn't like a father figure to these guys, but like the dynamic is kind of similar where it's like, you're taking this guy away, everybody, like that's our coach. That's our head coach. And then
Right.
you bring in somebody else. It doesn't matter who it is. You might not fully buy in because it's like, we should, what the hell are we doing here? We should have had Antonio Pierce this whole time. So this might be a lose-lose situation for the Raiders.
Well, my whole thing with this video is, you have Nate Hobbs, who came in, I think he was drafted from Mayock and Gruden, and now he's been through McDaniels, and now he's gone through 9 games of Antonio Pierce, and he's like, all we need to do to keep success is bring back AP. That's what he's saying. And maybe that's just him telling the media because he wants his message out there, but really he might think like, okay, really, we just need a quarterback. And he's not going to say that, right? But obviously the guys on defense are loyal to him. Davante Adams has said the locker room is loyal to him. Davante Adams is loyal to AP. You know who's really loyal to him? Is the other guy in that video. Jack Jones. High school, college, and now coached under AP on the Raiders. I'm not saying Jack Jones would ruin things if AP doesn't get the job and it's like Harbaugh, but like I could see it now because, and I'm not trying to say the wrong thing here about Jack Jones because I really think he's like a top corner. He could be our starting corner. He could be our guy. But there's this like little red flag I get where he's like, oh, we'll boycott, blah, 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 because that's his guy, And it feels like things just lucked out and he ended up on the Raiders with Antonio Pierce. But at the same time, it's like, what was the context of him getting out of New England? Why would New England just randomly cut him? Because he clearly had he was the same prospect with New England than he is here, So why would they just up and give up? Other than maybe him forcing himself off the team? So if they don't keep AP, does he do the same thing with the Raiders? And if he starts doing that in the locker room, does that create a rippling effect? Where other guys are like, yeah, fuck this, or whatever I don't expect that. But I mean, when AP took over, you said it. You were like, oh man, this talk about, oh, now he's letting the players, take over the locker room, take over the team. If there is going to be a backlash, it's that AP set off a ticking timer of, hey, if you don't keep me, these guys are going to fucking revolt.
Yeah.
Could that happen?
I think it very well could happen. It's happened before. I'm sure it's happened before.
And then what happens? Then what happens? The Raiders lose that top 10 defense that I'm all excited about.
I'll tell you exactly.
Go ahead.
It's a ripple effect. All right. If Mark Davis hires Jim Harbaugh, I'm almost confident that if they don't win immediately, they're gonna have to blow this team up. Well, I don't know how Harbaugh is with constructing brand new teams. I know he does good in stepping into situations, but like right now, this might be the toughest situation to step into if you're a new head coach. No quarterback, talented team that likes the guy before me.
Yeah. And I don't want to be all negative towards like Jack Jones. I just sent you another video. Like he said some really good things about this offseason and stuff. Like I'm not trying to accuse him of like potentially not being a team player. Like he seems like he's a team player. All right. Like I'm not trying to get all negative. It's just this time, like I didn't have as strong feelings towards Bazakia as I do now towards AP and specifically Patrick Graham and specifically this defense. It's like, okay, AP, you're the head coach. What are you going to do? I'm going to fix the offense. Awesome. Like it really is just give me the quarterback, figure out the running back, figure out the offensive line. We're good. Jim Harbaugh, welcome to the Raiders. You're the head coach. Your defense is now deteriorating. You have to find new coaching staffs on offense and defense. You have to fix both the offense and probably the defense too. It's twice the job for Jim Harbaugh, And oh, by the way, they bring in a new GM. So now the GM has to reevaluate the team. And we have people in leadership roles who don't fully know the team yet. Whereas you keep AP, you keep Champ Kelly, let's just attack the offseason because we're fucking ready. We're going there. We're already there, I don't know if that makes sense, but I remember when Ziegler came in, it was like, oh, well, we didn't get a full offseason like you usually would. Usually you would start in January, but we kind of didn't get to start until March. Or what? It's like, well, that fucking sucks. I don't really want that, but I understand. Again, I understand it with Harbaugh. There's a lot of potential there, and maybe that's worth it. And if it happens, it happens. All I care about is what's best for the team. But my God, I really think that this defense is worth keeping, and I think a lot of people would agree with me. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting.
Mm-hmm. I just want to say too, Jack Jones said something in that video that was very interesting to me. He said that, that Antonio Pierce made the players, enjoy their job, like to actually, enjoy it from the past, and this is just like what I've witnessed on social media after the fallout of Harbaugh, former players after Jim Tomsula got hired, I forget which player it was. But they were like, it's finally nice to have a coach that isn't like, trying to make practice living hell.
They were saying living hell towards Harbaugh?
Yeah, like Harbaugh would make practices so hard. And then you would have other players also, from the same team. I want to say it was either Alex Boone, Joe Staley, or, one of the linemen. And it's like, we practiced hard and that's why we were so good.
About Harbaugh?
Yeah, like defending Harbaugh, being such a tough head coach. Like,
right.
I know for a fact if Harbaugh comes in, it's going to be a massive shift. Like Harbaugh is going to want to practice hard so that way the games are easy. Like, every coach has their kind of own vibe, their own vibe that they bring to the building. But I know Harbaugh is like super intense.
Yeah. So, I think we're just about done here. I do have one last thing, which is kind of Joel,
thank you for checking it out. You have one last thing. Do we want to answer this question from Joel right now or to end it off? I know
I'll answer it. Right.
Reasoning was like at the beginning of the topic. So.
Right. I mean, we kind of were just talking about this, but I mean, okay, like this is a great question as far as who would you pick right now? Like Josh, who would you pick?
I would pick Jim Harbaugh. You can't let him slip away. He will figure it out, even if it's not with this roster.
Right. Yeah, I mean, my true answer is I want what's best for the Raiders. I'm not a future teller. I can't tell the future. Neither can Mark Davis. But if Harbaugh is the best for the future of the Raiders, then yes, I would pick Harbaugh. Right now, where my my fears take me and stuff, I might lean AP, but is that the right move to make a move based off of, oh man, I don't want to lose this, when really it's like, yeah, but you could have a guy who could bring you a championship. It's like, maybe Harbaugh's the right guy. And again, as far as, bringing in a quarterback and, building up that quarterback, Harbaugh's probably the right guy for that. So I guess my gut tells me Harbaugh, but my heart tells me AP, if that makes sense.
I think that's a good way to put it. What were you going to say to finish out this topic?
Yeah, the last thing here, and this is kind of proof to me that the Raiders are going to truly go through and do their due diligence as far as this offseason hiring process, because these were interim roles with the head coach, GM, and offensive coordinator. Those interim tags nothing's been said, but I'm assuming they're now gone. I don't know though. This is from Vic Tafer on Twitter. Mark Davis has requested permission to speak with Colts assistant GM Ed Dodds and 49ers assistant GM Adam Peters for the Raiders general manager position. This lines up with him, Mark Davis, hiring a GM before a coach. Champ Kelly has a very good chance of being promoted from the interim role. That's from Vic Tafer. So first off, what do you think about Adam Peters?
I really don't know what to think about Adam Peters. He's been with the 49ers ever since Shanahan and Lynch have been here, or at least maybe he signed on, somewhere along the line, since 2017. But he's been with the team for now, many years. The 49ers don't really disclose what it is that Adam Peters does and what it is John Lynch does or doesn't do. So it's hard from the outside to really, George Kittle's great. That's Adam Peters, or George Kittle's great. That's John Lynch. It just seems like the 49ers have historically under Shanahan and Lynch drafted very well outside of the first 3 rounds. And they have been pretty inconsistent, to say it nicely, in the first 3 rounds, ever since they've been here. Like their best 2 picks, or their best several picks, inside the first 3 rounds ever since they've been here have been Nick Bosa, Brandon Ayuk, and Deebo Samuel. I'm trying to think of other first, second, or third round picks that have been great. Oh, Fred Warner. Fred Warner has been, I think he was a 3rd round pick out of BYU. Other than that, they have been pretty spotty in that especially the first round, because the past 3 years, our draft pick has been Trey Lance, who only gave us 4 games. But not Lance's fault. Just kind of the way it unfolded was, unfortunate. Adam Peters, I've heard nothing but nice things about him. I don't know if I should feel sad or indifferent on whether or not he leaves for potentially the Raiders, potentially Washington Commanders. I know that they're interviewing, or they requested to interview him too. I'm just kind of annoyed at the timing of this, because I don't think that teams should be allowed to interview people during playoff runs. I know the Ravens are also having that happen to them too, where, maybe their defensive coordinator is also getting interviewed, but you don't think it has an impact? Your mind is not in the same place.
Right. I think
you should be focused on what's ahead instead of your future.
100%. I think there's well, for one thing, they're requesting permission, I think. So the team can deny it, for one thing. There also may be a different rule set for coaches and GMs, and whether or not they can interview them in person or virtually. I want to say there's rules to that as far as the timeline of the playoffs and such. And I swear I might have saw it somewhere, but I lost it. So,
Joel says Ed Dodds GM equals Harbaugh. No disrespect to Ed Dodds, but I don't even know who that is.
Well, it's funny because actually, here, first off, for Adam Peters. I'm going to read the first 2 paragraphs of his biography on the Niners website. If I can stop coughing. Adam Peters is in his 21st season in the NFL and 3rd as the Niners assistant general manager. Previously, Peters spent 4 seasons as vice president of player personnel for the Niners. Very good. He joined San Francisco after spending 8 seasons, 2009 to 2016, with the Denver Broncos. In 2016, Peters was named the Broncos' director of college scouting after spending 2 seasons as the team's assistant director of college scouting. Peters spent 3 years as a national scout after originally joining the Broncos as a regional scout in 2009. So, a lot of scouting past in his time.
In his career.
In his career, there you go. Thank you. But recently, a very high-ranking person for the Niners. So this is a pretty good. I mean, I think that was the first name that came out as far as who the Raiders reached out to. So,
yeah, it's funny that like he's attributed to scouting and like really paying attention to to college players. The 49ers did not draft well this year. Right now, I mean, we're going to talk about one of their highest draft picks in the Niners Rams recap, but besides that player, and the player I'm referring to is Jake Moody. Besides Jake Moody, which of their rookies are making an impact? Well, Jair Brown, but Jair Brown is playing a lot because Hufanga is hurt.
Right. Yeah. I mean, regardless, obviously this is a really good Niners team, so he's had a lot of time to see this team go from the first year of Shanahan to now, and hopefully he has a good grasp on how to build up a team, right? This is breaking news actually that just came out. The Chargers are requesting to interview 49ers defensive coordinator Steve Wilks for their head coaching vacancy.
Tyler's not going to like that.
Yeah, he just texted, I'm going to kill myself. But Ed
Did
Dodds,
he really?
I swear he just said that. Ed Dodds, the Colts, let me see, sorry. Shit. What was he, the assistant GM? Ed Dodds? For the Colts. Yes, the assistant GM for the Colts. I'm not finding a biography for him, but I do remember one thing. He at least got a request to be interviewed when the Raiders ended up getting Ziegler. I don't know if they interviewed him or if he denied it. It's also possible that they interviewed him a first time and they requested a second time and he may have denied that one. I remember him being my favorite candidate in that GM search that ended up becoming that hiring cycle, yeah. And Champ Kelly was another one. No, that became Ziegler. That was 2 years ago. And he was still with the Colts at the time, so I thought he was going to end up with another team, and he's still with the Colts. So Ed Dodds is interesting. Yeah. So so far so good as far as who they are requesting to interview. We'll see who else they interview, and then as Vic Tafur mentioned, Chip Kelly is very much still in that process as well, so add him to that list. But yeah, we'll see how it goes, and then I guess this is my thing. It's only Monday. Jim Harbaugh has a big game tonight, the national championship, right? And the outcome of that game will be very interesting. I would have to imagine that he will start getting the calls tomorrow. The requests and the calls will come tomorrow. There's no reason for a team to do that today.
It's either going to be, hey, Jim, congratulations on the big win. You looking for an even bigger one?
Right.
Or, hey, Jim, sorry about the game. Let's talk business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, Vic Tafur mentioned something that's interesting to me, which is Mark Davis likes to look for his GMs first. I can't help but think that this time might be different because, again, Harbaugh seems like the type of guy that would want his say on all of that. And you even mentioned he had a hard time with Balky, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
he didn't want Trent Baalke.
yeah. Now, if Dodds is the type of guy that he likes or he knows or something, then that could explain that, But I would have to imagine that if the Raiders were to get Harbaugh, he would be hired first, and then right after that would be the GM, or they announce both at the same time. But it'll be interesting. This next week will be interesting. I've seen a lot of people say that they think the Harbaugh hire might go quickly, whether it's the Raiders or the Chargers, or apparently maybe the Commanders are interested, which there's no way he goes there. So we'll see. Hopefully the next time we have a podcast, we might be reacting to something like that. But regardless, at the end of the day, I just want what's right for the Raiders, what's best for the Raiders, and what gets us closer to winning another Super Bowl championship.
Do you want to look at the Raider one first, or you want to look at the Niner one?
We'll do Raiders first.
Yeah, we'll do the Raider one first. The Raiders were so hard to judge this year. There was a lot of missed predictions because, man, it's like they would be playing well, and then all of a sudden they just couldn't get it going on offense. But we both finished 11 for 17 for the Raiders.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, the Week 4 Charger game is probably the one where I'm like, why did I pick the Raiders?
Mm-hmm.
And then also, like, my gut was telling me the Vikings were going to win the Vikings game, but I don't even fault myself for that one because, again, if Hunter Renfrow just doesn't fumble that game, we probably win. But
maybe.
No, yeah, 11 out of 17, not bad.
There we go. Is that a little bit better?
Oh, to see everything? Yeah.
Yeah. Here, there we go. Or is it too small?
No, that's good. At least to me,
So we finished off the season. I had 23 correct predictions and 11 incorrect ones. You had 25 correct predictions with 9 incorrect ones. But
we'll keep track of because we're going to start doing playoff predictions.
Yeah.
They won't be as we don't have to make a box for it, but we can just kind of tally it or whatever. And then come back after like the Super Bowl or something. But
I might make a box for like Niner ones. Well, but we'll see how I want to do it.
True.
So that Chiefs game, that last, you were pretty. I gave it to you because you were pretty adamant the Raiders were going to win, but I think you were expecting Jacobs to play. So
yeah.
that last minute switch, if you had been like, sort of thinking it was a coin toss, and then you wanted to switch, I would have said nah.
Yeah.
There's no way. But I re-listened to that video in particular, and you were like, yeah, the Raiders are going to win this game. So, man, what a hell of a season. We got more right than we did wrong, but the Niners really helped me a lot because I just picked them every game.
Yeah, you did. Man. Yeah.
So they're a good team to bet on.
Yeah. No, I know. They are probably a lot of bettors' favorites this year.
Yeah.
So